So that was a lot. That was like a lot, a lot. Holy shit. Okay. I don't know if this is going to be one video or two videos. I have no idea. I'm not even going to think about that. I'm just going to start talking about stuff. Um yeah, let's start talking about some of the character stuff that happened here. I'm going to leave Dalinar for the last for fairly obvious reasons, I should think. Um let's start with Caledon. Caledon is Caledon continues to take a back seat in this book in that I feel like he is the character who has had the least, I guess, dramatic growth in this book compared to Dalinar and Shalon. Which is fine since we had like two books of very Caledon focused plot. Um, so he takes a bit of a backseat here, but he still does have some interesting moments here. In particular, during this whole climax, Caledon fails to say his, I want to say, fourth oath. I believe it's the fourth one. Yeah, it looks like he knows what the words should be. He feels it, like he feels what the next step has to be, but it's not an oath he's willing or able to swear right now. And we don't learn what it is either. I do have a theory, however. Based on the context in which he fails to swear the oath, and also based on generally some of the issues, I guess, that Cal has been dealing with in this particular book. I think that the oath is, obviously I don't know what the exact wording would be, but something along the lines of basically accepting that there are going to be people you can't save. Like, accepting that you can't always save everyone. And that it's not that it's not your job to save every living person, and you shouldn't blame yourself if you fail. I think that's obviously something that Caledon struggles with, and clearly something he is not matured enough yet to deal with. Which I understand. That's a really difficult oath to swear. I think, if I'm right about what it is. Um, anyway, there's the hint that if he does swear that oath, he might be able to control Windspren? Maybe? I'm not sure what's going on there. A bunch of Windspren, like, swirled around him when he was about to swear the oath. I don't know. We'll see what that's about in the next book. Anyway, that was one big thing that happened with Caledon here. And the other big thing was obviously his final confrontation with Amaram. Amaram is finally dead. Woohoo! Both of the worst people on Roshar are dead. Now, both Sadeas and Amaram. Excellent. And during his confrontation with Amaram, Amaram basically tells him that something along the lines of, I made you. Like, you are the person you are because of what I did to you. And Caledon says, no, I'm the person I am because of Bridge 4. Bridge 4 saved me, Bridge 4 reforged me, Bridge 4 made me. And I really like this. I really don't like the whole trope of, like, oh, the villain had to do his evil, horrible things, or the hero would never have realized their true potential. Which I actually thought for a while this book was gonna do that with Dalinar, but I don't think it did ultimately. We'll get back to Dalinar. Yeah, I really like the fact, I really like Caledon's line. I don't remember the exact wording, but something like, if you test 10 spears in a battle and 9 of them break, that battle didn't forge that 10th spear. Someone else forged that spear prior to the battle to be better than the others. Like, that battle didn't create a good spear, it just eliminated the ones that couldn't make it. Which isn't the same thing. He said it in a slightly, like, the way I said it implies that eliminating the bad spears is good, which he didn't want to imply, because obviously the bad spears in this case are his friends who died. I don't remember the exact wording, like I said, and I don't have it in my notes, unfortunately. Anyway, I really like that. I also really like that Caledon wasn't actually the one to kill Amaram. Because in realizing that Bridge 4 are essentially the people who made him, who forged him, he also realized that it's not always his job to do everything. Sometimes Bridge 4 can do stuff, and in this case, Amaram is killed by Rock of all people. So that was nice. I like that whole thing. I'm curious to see where Rock's story goes forward now, because now he's broken his oath to not fight. Which might lead to some interesting breakthroughs with his character in the next book. Definitely looking forward to seeing that. Anyway, that's about it for Caledon. He's, like I said, he's just not the central focus character here. Neither is Shalon, but Shalon has more going on in terms of her revelation and climax here. So Shalon seems to be settling into a interesting situation. She has not dealt with the fact that she has all these different personalities. She has merely weaned their numbers down to 3. She is no longer apparently at risk of being taken over by any form that she takes. Instead, she has just essentially made Veil and Radiant into permanent parts of herself. Or perhaps she has made them into permanent entities separate from herself, which is even more interesting. Obviously, they're not literally physically separate from her. They still share a body, but she seems to be more comfortable just casually talking with herself, except not with herself, because she's talking with her other selves, with Veil and Radiant. Which I find really interesting. I find that to be a really, really compelling concept for a character, and I hope that that stays that way. Like, I hope that Shallan always stays this plural person going forward. Just because I feel like that will make for a more interesting story. It makes her stand out a bit. Shallan is probably still my favorite character, by the way. Even though when we get to Dalinar, I'll talk about some other possibilities. Anyway, Shalon, so I feel like she's not really, like, I feel like she thinks that she's in a stable place right now in terms of Veil and Radiant, and she's willing to just stay as she is. And she's also made her decision in terms of her romantic life. She's firmly selected Adolin and married him, actually. I did not expect that to happen so quickly. A part of me still hopes that eventually Adolin and Shalon will fully embrace the idea of Veil as a completely separate person, and that Veil might be able to be in a relationship with Caledon. I still think that would be a really interesting situation if Shalon's if 2 of Shalon's personalities were just dating different guys and everyone knew and everyone was okay with it. I don't think that's where we're going with this, but I do think it would be nice, especially since Adolin seems to be perfectly fine treating Veil as a separate person. It says here at the end that Adolin basically sees Veil as a drinking buddy. Like, he doesn't see her as Shalon, he sees her as a separate person who is his drinking buddy. And I feel like it would be perfectly in character for him to be okay with his drinking buddy uh, being with Caledon, even if his drinking buddy happens to sometimes be his wife. Um, it's I mean, obviously it's not like a situation with like a super clear real world equivalent, because it deals with like the crazy light weaver situation, but I think that could work. Anyway, enough about the triad. Let's talk about a different triad, which is Shalon, Veil, and Radiant. I really, really like the scene where like Shalon, Veil, and Radiant are standing together, like, and two of them are illusions, and one of them is the real person. Um, and Yas now walks over, and she reaches out to grab Shalon's arm, and her arm passes through Shalon, and it turns out that Radiant was actually the real one, and that Shalon and Veil were the illusions. Uh, like, that feels like some pretty hefty symbolism in this case about Shalon, like, her own personality sometimes taking a back seat to things. I do hope that going forward, Shalon's primary personality doesn't get completely overshadowed by Veil and Radiant, because Shalon herself is still my favorite character, and I wouldn't like it if she was completely replaced by Veil and Radiant, but I don't think she will be. I think that they've reached some sort of harmony now. Okay, moving on. Who is next? Seth. Seth decides to swear, really unexpectedly, an oath to follow Dalinar. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense now that I think about it, because he would have seen a lot of Dalinar during his time hunting him, basically last book. I imagine he's like observed Dalinar for long enough that he can tell that Dalinar is a super honorable guy. So I find it interesting that that was his choice here. And I also find it interesting that Nail doesn't care. Or rather, Nail is like, yeah, that's a perfectly valid choice, even though that makes us on opposite sides. Anyway, come by next week for training. Just a really interesting situation with the alignment of the Skybreakers right now, who are aligned with the Fingers. Anyway, why did I start talking about Seth here? I don't really have much to say about Seth other than that fact, really. I will say that I love the Nightblood bits here. I love the fact that Seth cannot wrap his head around the fact that Nightblood is just a moron. And instead, every time Nightblood is himself and therefore stupid, Seth will interpret it as like some kind of deep philosophical statement full of meaning. I love that little detail. It's a great interplay between these two characters. I also, speaking of Nightblood, I also find it interesting that Lift refers to Nightblood as female at one point. That's interesting. What's going on there? I'm trying to remember, but I don't think that was a thing in Warbreaker. Like, I don't think Nightblood read as female to Vivenna, for example. I'm not sure. But apparently, he, or rather she, reads as female to Lift. Who knows? It could also be a typo, because it's like just one occasion where Lift refers to Nightblood as she. It could literally just be a typo. So I'm not going to read too much into that just yet. Also, Lift and Nightblood interacting is just a delightful concept that I did not know I needed in my life, and I'm so glad it exists. Just a perfect pairing. I hope Lift is the one who ends up with Nightblood long term. Frankly, I just want more of that banter. let's see, who else is there before we get to the real deal here? Renarin. Renarin is... Oh boy! Renarin has apparently bonded a odium-aligned spren, like one of Sja-Anat's corrupted spren. Apparently Gliss is not the kind of spren we thought they were. Which I knew. Like, I didn't know that Gliss was an odium-aligned spren, but it was really clear from very early on that something was up with Gliss. Like, that Gliss was not a normal spren in some way. And now we know why. We still don't know how this happened, or when, or anything really, and I wonder if we're going to find out at all in the next book, or if we're going to have to wait for the actual Renarin backstory book, which I believe is going to be like book 7 or 8 or something. I kind of hope not, because I feel like I really want to know what's going on with Gliss. And actually, less with Gliss and more with Renarin. Like, where did you find this thing? Why did you bond it? What happened, Renarin? There's also Yasna, who is queen now. That, I did not expect that. I thought it would be Adeline or Dalinar, but apparently it's Yasna, which I support. I think she's probably... Well, I was going to say she's better suited than Adeline or Dalinar, but that's not really true. Dalinar would be well suited. Adeline, not so much. Yasna is extremely competent, possibly the most competent person in this book. And she's also kind of not super empathetic or necessarily moral. And I'm not sure that's what we need in a ruler right now. I do think she's a better choice than Adeline, definitely. I do still think Dalinar would have been a better choice, but it also makes sense why he didn't do it. Like I agree with him as to his reasons for not taking the throne. So I guess really this was the best choice, probably. Let's see, what else? Oh, right. Since I'm talking about Yasna, I just want to say, Yasna's displays of surge binding in this section, in the final battle for Thaylen City, are some of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like, Yasna at what I assume is, like, her full potential, like, showing off her full powers, is terrifying and incredibly impressive, and I get the feeling that she is, like, leagues ahead of all the other Knights Radiant right now, in terms of just raw ability. I kind of wonder how many oaths she's sworn. I mean, she's been a Knight Radiant for a while. Because, like, she met Ivory on the night of Gavilar's death, which means she's probably been a Knight Radiant for years now. And it makes me wonder, like, what if she's actually, like, already on her 4th oath or something? Who knows? What else happened here, character-wise? Adeline, Adeline seems to be more at peace with who he is. He's admitted to Dalinar that he killed Sadeas, and he also kind of, like, said that he'd do it again, like he's not racked with guilt about it. It's a bit weird that it kind of looks like there aren't going to be any major legal consequences for that. Like I agree with you killing Sadeas, but I feel like it would be weird if Dalinar just let you get away with it. We'll see about that. I don't know if we'll get some closure on that in the next book, if maybe Dalinar will actually, like, want to put him on trial. But yeah, he's made peace with who he is. He's no longer as self-conscious about not being a Radiant. By the way, Shalon making her illusory version of Adolin a Windrunner, and Windrunner and Adolin having like a thought such as like, I can't take this anymore, and just turning around and walking away. That was very sad, but also very funny. Shalon, that's incredibly insensitive. What are you doing? Uh, anyway, what else? Right, Venli. Venli has, I think, at this point, pretty fully committed to betraying Odium. Like, she's still technically with Odium's forces right now. She hasn't actually made the switch. But she's, like, sworn the first oath already. And she's, like, consciously plotting to betray Odium. So, like, I think we can say that Venli has, like, completed that whole arc, really. Now she just needs like an opportunity to actually make the switch. In terms of like openly switch sides. Anyway, I think that's enough about. I think that's enough beating around the bush. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Dalinar. So I get why he's a lot of people's favorite character now. I really, really do. I don't think he's quite managed to surpass Shalon for me personally. Um, but I do think that he is an incredibly impressive bit of character work on Brandon's part. Like, genuinely some of the best character work ever. The climactic you cannot have my pain scene is a true work of art. Like, I got chills while that was happening. I absolutely love everything about that scene. It was so cool. And it made perfect sense. Like, basically, as soon as the scene started, I like saw where it was going. Like, as soon as Odium started pushing Dalinar to accept that Odium is the one responsible for all the bad things Dalinar has done, the instant that started happening, everything clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, I get why cultivation did this. I get what her goal was. I get why Dalinar had to go through everything the way he did. I get why he's been getting his memories back. And I get what's about to happen. Um, and like I said, it was an incredibly impressive and well executed climax for Dalinar here. Um, Apparently, bondsmiths are terrifyingly powerful. He just smashed the three realms of existence briefly together, apparently, which and just created an impromptu perpendicularity, which I don't think we've ever heard of anyone on any Cosmere world being able to do, like even remotely, like short of an actual shard of Adonalsium. So that's impressive. He also referred to himself as Unity with a capital U, and then Odium had this line that was like, "No, we killed you," and like, did Odium briefly think that Dalinar was Adonalsium? What a weird line. I'm really curious about that because like it's not like if he like Unity with a capital U is a weird one because it makes it sound like the name of a shard, like because that's like kind of how the shard naming scheme works. Uh, and the shard called Unity feels like it wouldn't be a shard; it would just be all the shards together. Um, but like he's obviously not in any way at Analsium. If anything, he seems like he's kind of if anything, I can see Dalinar potentially like becoming a new host for the Shard of Honor. But in that case, the line "we killed you" becomes weird, because who's we? Honor, as far as we know at least, was killed by Odium alone, whereas Adonalsium was killed by Odium and many other people. 15 other people, to be exact. Possibly 16? I'm still not sure about Hoyd. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that particular line, but that's a distraction. The main thing here is Dalinar's fantastic display of character growth here. He not only refuses Odium's offer of absolution, because he realizes that absolution would undo all of his character growth. He realizes that in order to become a better person, in order to be redeemed, in order to be a good person, he has to fully internalize the true horror of everything he's done. And he has to accept it as his own acts in order to move on from it. It's the line that he says, the most important step a man can take is the next one. Which in this case I think refers to the idea that like you're not like, the important thing isn't to change the past or even to change how you feel about the past. The important thing is to use what happened in the past in order to keep moving forward, which he couldn't do if he absolves himself of blame for like the truly horrible things that he definitely did. Like, it's definitely like, he's right. It's not Odium's fault he massacred a city. It's definitely a thing he chose to do. Like, Odium may have influenced that, but like not that much. Yeah, we were in his head when he made that decision. It was not Odium doing that. So he does that, and then he also overcomes the thrill. And when I say overcomes the thrill, I mean not just in himself. He actually conquers Nergaul and imprisons him, or it, in the Ruby. The King's Drop, I believe it's called. So yeah, they have like there's an unmade in a little rock now. That's an oddly cute mental image. Honestly, Nergaul in general was portrayed shockingly sympathetically and almost kind of cute in this section, like a little animal that just wants to have fun and play with you. It was kind of weird, but I liked it. I liked that particular depiction of one of the Unmade. In general, none of the Unmade have really been what I expected them to be. I made the comparison to the Forsaken from Wheel of Time earlier in this book, and that is very much not what is going on here. The Unmade are not that. They are not the Nazgul. They are more complicated and more interesting than that, which is kind of a theme, really. Stormlight Archive doesn't really have, like, none of the dark forces, the evil forces, are actually evil, with the possible exception of Odium himself. Like, Odium himself so far does not appear to have any redeeming qualities, and does appear to just be evil. But pretty much everyone working for Odium and on his side has some very compelling reasons to do so, which I really like. Really, the only I still don't like how cartoonishly evil Sadeas's men were portrayed to be. It makes sense for Sadeas himself to be cartoonishly evil because he's a person. Some people are like that. But it was a bit weird how like his camp was ontologically evil. It makes a bit more sense now when it's implied that Odium has been making them that way. Like, Odium has been whispering to Sadeas's men for a while because he was planning for this particular turncoat moment. But I feel like there could have been a bit more nuance given. Again, not to Sadeas himself. I like Sadeas the way he was, but to Sadeas's men. As it stands, really the only one of Sadeas's men who has been humanized is Gaz. And Gaz barely counts as one of Sadeas's men. What else do I have to talk about here? I've talked about Dalinar and how much I love everything that happened there. Oh yeah, I do actually want to talk a bit more about Dalinar. Dalinar seems like he's going to be more than we think. Like he's more than is normal for a bondsmith. Significantly more, in fact. The Stormfather is very surprised and confused by some of the stuff Dalinar did here. So, between that and the whole I am unity, oh no, we killed you exchange that I talked about earlier, I am wondering if Dalinar is going to be massively centrally important, not just to the ultimate conclusion of the Stormlight Archive, but maybe to the Cosmere as a whole. Sorry. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Dalinar in this section. Who else do we have here? Lift doesn't really have any big character moments here. She's just herself. She's delightful. I just love Lift. Seth I already talked about. There's a bunch of minor characters I can talk about. Oh yeah, we get Ash, who I think is supposed to be maybe Shalash, I want to say, just based on the name. She's a herald, anyway. So Ash is the woman who has been defacing statues, and she has specifically been defacing statues and paintings and other depictions of herself. That's the thing I didn't realize, because in all the previous scenes, I guess I just didn't really pay much attention to the individual names of the heralds. And so I was kind of under the impression that she was just defacing all depictions of the heralds, but I think she's only been defacing depictions of herself because she's racked with guilt over what they did to Taln and has this desire to not be worshipped. She thinks she doesn't deserve it. In fact, this book's climax, I think I'll end this video on this note, actually, and then talk about some of the larger plot stuff that happened and Cosmere connections and stuff like that in the second video. So, this book, especially this climax of this book, has a very strong central theme in a way that previous books, I think, didn't. The previous two books had individual themes for individual characters. Like, all the individual characters had their own stuff to deal with. I feel like in this one, almost all the characters had to deal with the same thing, which is guilt and self-loathing and overcoming it and not blaming themselves. Shallan, for obvious reasons. Dalinar, for obvious reasons. Adolin, because of Sadeas. Caledon, I think, is the one who didn't manage to deal with it in this book, because, like I said, I think he's going to have to deal with it in the next book, if I'm right about what his oath is. He's still not ready to stop blaming himself for the deaths of people he couldn't save. But it's clearly something that he needs to overcome and something that this book explored and hinted at. Seth is obviously dealing with a ton of guilt, and he's seeking to assuage it by doing what he's doing now. And then there's Ash, like I said. And then there's Teft. Teft's oath is interesting. Teft swears the third oath here, which I don't know when he swore the second, but okay. And his version of the third oath is different from Caledon's. Caledon's version of the third oath was, I believe, I will protect those I hate as long as it is right, or something like that. Whereas Teft's version is, I will protect those I hate, even if the one I hate the most is me. So clearly, like, even though Teft barely had a character arc this book, honestly, it felt a bit weird that he was the big, like, that he played such a big role in the climax to me, because I feel like he wasn't sufficiently established as a character, to be honest. Well, maybe, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Anyway, yeah, but Teft's whole thing was also dealing with guilt and dealing with self-loathing and forgiving himself. And it's also Venli's thing, because Venli now has to forgive herself for the fact that she is personally responsible for everything that's happening, basically. Like, more than any other individual person currently living on Roshar, I think, except for obviously Odium himself, Venli is the one responsible for a lot of this. In a way. I don't blame her necessarily. Like, I don't think it's like a, oh, you should feel terrible about this, but it is kind of like, she did do this. Like, she's the one who summoned him. Oops. Yeah, I think that's it as far as what I want to talk about in this particular. Oh, wait, actually, I forgot to talk about one more thing. Alcocar. Alcocar was also a character in this book defined by seeking absolution, and hopefully he found it on the end of Moash's spear. Probably not, but I'd like to think he did. So, as I was saying, I think that's plenty for this video. In my next video, I will keep talking about Oathbringer Part 5, which I think I could probably talk about for more videos than just 2, but I'm going to try to stick to 2. And there I'm going to talk about some of the larger plot stuff going on here, some of the other themes, I guess, and politics at play, although I have less to say about that this time. I'm also going to talk about Hoid, the Hoid epilogue, and I'm going to talk about Mistborn Era 2. I'm going to give a spoiler warning before I talk about it, because I'm going to talk about some pretty wild, but I think at this point, pretty blatantly plausible theories about the future of Mistborn Era 2 specifically, and the Cosmere in general. So, I'm going to sign off now, and I will be back in my next video with all that stuff I just said. Goodbye, and remember, the most important step you can take is always the next one.